Welcome to B2B Marketing Methods. I'm your host, Terri Hoffman, and I'm the CEO of Marketing Refresh. Let's face it, embracing digital marketing is daunting. This podcast was created to make it more approachable. Join me as we talk to CEOs, sales leaders, and revenue growth experts who will share lessons learned and tips from their own journeys. Welcome to another episode of B2B Marketing Methods. My guest today is Beth Dickson. Beth is the Regional Director of Western Colorado for an organization called Manufacturer's Edge. Who is Manufacturer's Edge, you might be wondering. I'm going to let her go into that in just a few minutes and explain who they are, what their priorities are as an organization, but she is going to be able to share a lot of information today with us about the field of manufacturing, not just from a revenue generation standpoint, but just talking about some of the common things that her clients as manufacturers are running into, some of their challenges. We're going to start with just having Beth introduce herself and tell us a little bit about her background and explain who Manufacturer's Edge is. So welcome, Beth. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Terri. So Beth Dickson, a Regional Director for Manufacturer's Edge, and my territory covers the west half of the state of Colorado. I live in Grand Junction. A lot of people are surprised to hear that in 19 counties that I cover, there are almost 1,000 manufacturers in those counties. There are over 7,000 manufacturers in the state of Colorado. Wow. So that's really just a little tiny portion of that. I have 4 colleagues on the Front Range that cover all those other manufacturers.
Tell us who Manufacturer's Edge is. Explain who your organization is.
So Manufacturer's Edge is the designated manufacturing extension partnership. So we call it the MEP for the state of Colorado. And there's an MEP in every state as well as Puerto Rico. So we're this network of MEPs fully focused on manufacturers in every state.
That's awesome. And my sense is that even a lot of manufacturers don't know that the whole kind of organization of MEPs and the network across the country exists.
100%. So I think a lot of people are out of touch with that resource until we go in and introduce ourselves and start to engage. Although there are some that really do know about us and use our resources. I can say, well, in my opinion, I feel like if you're a manufacturer in any state, your MEP for that state is going to be your best resource for anything that you need to accomplish in your company.
So what are some of the main ways that you support and help the manufacturing industry and your clients?
This is like the first question that a lot of our manufacturers, when we introduce ourselves, ask too. But let me back it up a little bit. The first thing we do is go in, introduce ourselves, get to know the business, tour the facility, find out a little bit more about what they're manufacturing on site. And then we propose a no-cost assessment. It's called a business health assessment. And that's a survey monkey. I mean, we just have the employer send that out to management team, the folks that make the decisions in the company. So sometimes that's like 3 people, and sometimes it's 15 or 20. And then we get those results back. It's all anonymous, which makes it a little interesting. But you do get some real feedback from management team that might not come to the surface unless we did this assessment.
Okay.
And what we do with that is we have a roundtable conversation, and all it does is identify where their pain points are and gives us a baseline as to where we need to start. And typically, I like to start with like the top 2 priorities, maybe 3, just because it can be overwhelming after that conversation with their team and a couple of people from my team. And we all start pushing this around, and the conversation gets pretty in-depth sometimes, but sometimes they're really aware of what they need and some of the trainings or consulting that they're looking to bring in. But sometimes it's a surprise to them too. So we shift and go in that other direction with them and really leave it up to them and let them guide us where those priorities are and where they want to start.
So something that I think might be helpful is if you're able to talk about just maybe the different categories of the business operation that you guys are looking at with that assessment. Like what kinds of areas of the company do you cover?
So some of the things that we do with that assessment is going to identify operations, your people, data and technology, success planning, leadership. It's really going to cover everything around all aspects of your business.
Okay. So I'm assuming it covers sales and marketing too?
It absolutely does.
Well, all of it's important, right? Like if any one of those parts of a business isn't kind of hitting on all cylinders, that can be the one stool piece that makes everything tip over. I just totally messed up that analogy, but I think the audience knows what I'm talking about. So
Yeah,
you're kind of making sure all of those pillars are strong in the organization and then helping them assess which priorities are the most important or the biggest challenges that they need to take on right away. So you're sitting back down and you're kind of involving that same group of stakeholders who helped answer the questions.
absolutely. So they're
Okay.
all a part of the conversation. We kind of leave it up to whoever the plant manager is, maybe the technical trainer, or even a CEO, COO. Whoever's leading that company is typically who's sending that survey out and identifying which responses they want, who they want to have respond, and what feedback they need.
Okay.
Like I said, it can be anywhere from 2 people, 3 people, up to 20. And so the conversations really vary. It just depends on the size of the manufacturer. But I always bring someone in from my team. So we have a second set of eyes, ears, thoughts. And then once we have that conversation, we bounce around through the survey. It's not like, oh, we just read it out and read out answers. It's an anonymous survey. So we don't know which employee answered what, but we can see if there's a gap. So if someone answers one, they don't really agree with what we're asking, and then someone else answers a five, we know there might be something, a conversation we need to have there. So
Yeah.
we'll call that out, and then we try to get a conversation going, not necessarily on our side so much. We do a lot of listening or encouraging with conversation.
Yeah.
And then we just listen to the client and see where those conversations go, ask them if they're surprised by the answers that they're getting or by those gaps between a 1 and a 5 answer.
Oh man, I bet. I bet it leads to a
Yeah,
lot of probably healthy conversations that have been hiding under the surface that are just kind of like giving them the forum
a
for
lot of
going
times.
over it together. What are some of the top challenges that you're seeing that are
Right.
coming to the surface?
So I've been with the company for 3 years,
Hmm.
and I can say they've changed a lot in the last 3 years. I would say in the first year I was here, there was a lot of conversation around supply chain. There's a lot of conversation around HR.
Hmm.
If you think about, for example, a smaller company maybe only has like 5 employees or less, you probably don't have an employee handbook or the things that you really need to have if you're going to scale. And
Yeah.
if they're bringing more employees on, and they have to have those things in place, right? So we have solutions to those. And we don't necessarily talk about solutions right away. I mean, like I said, we want to identify those top priorities. My team and I get back together and we talk about what we heard, and we brainstorm like, hey, this is what I heard, this is what they heard, this is what they're telling us they need and want. And we kind of mesh it all together. We marry it so it makes sense, and then I go back to them after that conversation and say, hey, is this kind of what you're thinking? Does this make sense after this conversation? So then we start to move forward. So
Yeah.
if it's HR related, if it's marketing related, Terri, so if somebody says, hey, I need some help with my website, or I need some help with graphic design or leveraging LinkedIn for my business,
Yeah.
then we have resources that we go to. And I to move into that a little bit too. So we have a combination of in-house experts as well as a network of specialists, which includes you, that are we vet those experts so that they don't have to. So again, we're a great resource. They don't have to take the time out of their very busy days to go and make phone calls and try to find the right fit for them. We already have those resources. So I like to call myself a matchmaker. So if I have 3 marketing people, 3 marketing consultants in our group of specialists, then I kind of identify which one I think is going to be the best fit for that company, whether they're a company of 5 people or a company of 200 people,
Right.
and what
Yeah.
their needs are specifically and what I know to be each specialist expertise.
Yeah, I mean,
And
that's really a huge value. Not just saying this because we're in the program and our company has been vetted, but it's a pretty extensive vetting process.
as
What our company went through in order to be qualified to be one of your suppliers and one of your partners, if you've put everyone in the group through that, I can definitely see how that provides value because as a manufacturer, you're just constantly being sold to. Everyone's trying to get in and give you lean training or help you set up HR functions or help you with your sales and marketing process. And if you guys have already vetted that team and have taken the time to learn their business and you know your suppliers, you're really in a much better consultative position to make those
Mhm.
matches for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
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 So some of the things that we do kind of move into another
I would
piece of
love
this.
it. Yeah.
So some of the things we do, we offer coaching, consulting, training, education, supply chain development, events, sponsorships. We do legislative outreach, volunteer boards, committees, task force. So really we have our hands in everything. And like I said, when I first came on, I was like, yeah, it's going to be great. It's a sales job. I get to go talk to manufacturers and see if they need some training and consulting. And it's really so much more than that. 3 years later, it's like you're working with and getting to know all of your community partners, chambers of commerce, your economic development partners, all of your regional resources. We're partnered with a World Trade Center of Denver, also CAMA
Mhm.
and OEdit. We have all of these resources, but then all these partners that we work together with to make sure that the manufacturers are successful and thriving and do everything we can to support them. That's really our only job. We don't go in just to go sell them something. Really sometimes it's just to make a connection with someone they don't already have a connection with. So if they're going to start international business and they aren't connected with the World Trade Center, the first thing I do is make an email introduction and say, hey, this is who we use over at World Trade Center of Denver. And then he takes it from there. And it's so easy for them because they might not have even thought about that or might not know where to start with that.
Yeah.
Because again, if they're a smaller company, they don't have the time. They're like, oh, this is just going to be, it's just being more time off my plate. But hoping to kind of lift some of that off of their shoulders so that they have more time to just focus on manufacturing.
Yeah. Well, again, it moves so quickly. Well, because I'm a business owner, like one of the hardest things that you deal with every day is just people management. And it's not because you necessarily have people who are hard to manage. It's just that people have lives outside of work. And the same happens in a manufacturing environment, especially if you've got multiple shifts running or if you're wearing multiple hats in a smaller organization that leaves you with less time to not only identify your problems, but also work on finding answers or solutions to those problems. So I mean, I'm really hoping that this episode helps raise awareness for the NEP program across the whole country, but specifically in Western Colorado, where you and I both live. Like there are
Yeah.
so many resources available to manufacturers locally that I want them to become more aware of.
I think that's just it is I have a program where I can go and see how many manufacturers are in each county. So I
Mhm.
spend most of my time in counties where there are the majority of manufacturers there, like Durango and Montrose and Grand Junction. But I do reach out to some of those counties where there might only be two because I don't want to leave anybody out. Really, I just want them to know who I am. So, and that doesn't always just start with an email. I can't tell you how many times I email somebody and there's no response just because they're like, who is this lady? What does she want from me? What is she trying to sell me? And really, that's not what it's about. Sometimes I'll drive to Craig or Steamboat and spend some time there and just walk in and introduce myself and let them know, like, hey, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm just here to let you know I'm a resource. And if you need anything, here I am. Here's my number. And that's typically how I go in and start meeting people. But over the last 3 years, I think it started with supply chain was just such a priority for everybody. And now that that's smoothed itself out a little bit, we've found a lot of solutions to that. We have a great platform that manufacturers can utilize. It's called Sustainment and getting them on board with a network. It's called the Colorado Manufacturing Network, which is a combination of all of our partners. Again, just resources for all of these manufacturers across Colorado. So it doesn't cost them anything to be a part of it. Um, all they have to do is say they want to be a part of it,
Yeah.
and then they have access to everything. But that sustainment platform is huge. We do supplier scouting, which also takes a lot of time off everybody's plate. Terri, I would say that's something I hear every day. I think my colleagues hear about it every day. Everybody's very focused on workforce right now. Machinists are kind of the really good ones are starting to age out.
Mhm.
And it isn't something that's really prominent in schools now. I don't think high schools, I think there are some communities like Montrose and Grand Junction that are really focused on it. It's great. There's some task forces and committees around workforce, which is great to see, and hoping to see some solutions to that in the future and near future, just because I think people are wondering, like, where are we going to find a machinist if we only have 4 of them out of the high school that are interested in this? But we have great resources like CMU Tech, and connecting with them and saying, hey, what do we need to do to get some of these students into your programs, or even adults into your programs that are looking for really solid work with some
Yeah.
of the manufacturers in our community?
Yeah. Well, see, and that, like, just having you describe that, that's crazy. That is not you trying to go in and sell lean training, right?
Yeah,
That's really helping at a developmental level to improve how a manufacturer is able to hire and kind of fill their pipeline of the next generation of people who are going to be on the front lines building product
right.
and being on the manufacturing line. So people who aren't familiar with Western Colorado, this is not the heavily populated part of the state. Whenever I tell someone I live in Colorado, they're like, "Oh, I've been to Denver before." And I'm like, "That's cool, but that's 4.5 hours away from where I live."
Right. We don't live there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love Denver, but we're in a different galaxy almost, and it's not the heavily populated part of the state. And so workforce development is really important. And I'm sure having those relationships with the high schools and school systems and the districts and the college levels, like that's so important, just because even in bigger cities, just making kids aware and young adults aware that those career paths are available is really important in developing that pipeline of workers who can be part of the process. So it sounds like more recently it's kind of shifted from the post-COVID, we can't get the supplies to continue our manufacturing process, and now it's shifted more to workforce. What are some of the other kind of big challenges that you hear about pretty commonly, even if they're fundamental? Like what are just like the common things?
Lean training is really at the top of mind. And that's really what we are kind of based off of too, is continuous improvement. So that's going to be like a lean course, Six Sigma,
Mhm.
5S. Any of these trainings are pretty common month to month, right? Usually I'm lining up some kind of training in those areas. And some of the other ones, I would say marketing is pretty high up there, just because people are really starting to develop their websites now, and they're like, how do I get more customers? Like, well, we know exactly how you get more customers, but it's just a matter of them wanting to make that investment too. And not everybody is to that level yet, but we try to tell them, like, hey, there are some grant opportunities out there. Some of them are with us, some of them are with OEdit, but we can guide them to wherever those opportunities are too. When somebody asks me about a grant, I I probably do more research than I need to, or I'm supposed to. But really, their success means that I'm succeeding in my role.
Yeah.
So I try to do as much as I can for them in those areas. It's been kind of fun too, just to get to know some of these manufacturers. As a side note, I see some pretty cool stuff made in Western Colorado. I mean, you wouldn't even believe some of the things. I mean, I signed an NDA, so I really can't talk about a lot of them. So,
Yeah.
but if you do your research and look up manufacturers in Western Colorado, you see anything from aerospace to craft brewing. If you're taking one thing and turning it into something else, that is considered a manufacturer. So do get to spend some time in some wineries, which is also fun. I just
Bummer.
had to throw that in there. Um, but we build these relationships with these manufacturers, and it's great because someone who's in craft brewing in Montrose, and they're just starting out, they're like, what are we doing wrong? I can get them connected with a brewery that has been extremely successful over the years, the last 10, 15 years, and have scaled into something really huge that everybody knows the name. And I can connect them and call them and say, hey, are you okay? These guys they're up and coming. Would you be okay with mentoring? Yeah, give me their name and their number and do an email introduction. Again, I get to be a matchmaker and find mentors for them so that they can succeed in their business.
That's huge. I think that it's like very hard sometimes to describe the value of a network because it's only as good as the people involved in it. But you're just because I've gotten to know you over the last year, you're really good at curating those relationships and building them and like really learning what someone's value is so that when you do your matchmaking, you're you're kind of filling that pain point. Anybody who's listening, like you should be able to spend some time with Beth because Beth knows everyone. She's just one of those people who ends up knowing everybody and finding out about them, even if she just is sitting 3 tables away at a winery. She'll know them before the night is over.
That does happen, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
But
I mean that as a compliment and in the nicest way, not because you're being out of control socially. It's because you genuinely like to know people and like to understand them. And then you use that skill to help your clients improve. Like that's just how you function, which is really cool.
well, I enjoy it. It's my favorite part of my job is getting to know people. And it's funny that you said that too about the being at a winery. I mean, that's actually how I met one of my biggest clients was an employee at a wine tasting. And his wife and I shared a bottle of wine at a tasting, or the three of us did. And we just started talking about what we do. And I said, "Who do you work for?" And he told me, and it's a big manufacturer in Western Colorado. And I told him what I do, and we exchanged business cards and talked a little bit more. And I was like, "Well, I'm not going to bug you anymore. We're just going to go ahead and drink this wine." But then it was a great introduction to that company. The relationship has really grown a lot since then. And
Yeah.
they've done some projects with us. We've supported them a lot in a couple of different priorities of theirs. So that's the fun part of doing all of this too and being in this role.
Seeing the difference that it can
Yeah,
make when you really help someone overcome that challenge or the pain point that's holding their business back at that point.
right. The hardest times are when everything is a pain point on that assessment. It's so challenging because you don't want to discourage a manufacturer, but you have to encourage them like, hey, let's pick the top two main priorities on this list. I understand we need to correct a lot of things. Maybe we need to find some solutions for you in different all of these areas, but let's start with and make it make sense for them too, because sometimes they just are so confused themselves. They're just like, we need help.
Yeah.
So
But
it's really fun to watch.
that's why having like an outside perspective is really important. I used to have a client that used this saying, he was a consultant, and he'd say it's like very hard to fix your own teeth. Right? Like how do you look inside of your own mouth and try to fix your own teeth? You can't. That's why you have a dentist. Like these things
Exactly.
make sense. And so you have to sometimes step back from your business and be willing to let an outsider or an outside group come in who are experts in that area and take a look at it and figure out how to help you map out that path to getting things back on track or on track for the first time so that you can overcome that problem. It's just, it's hard to face up to it. I mean, I've had to do that as a business owner and it's not fun. It usually means you have to grow up and mature and no one likes doing that. But it's important, especially when you think about the people who work for you and how you're helping them develop and how you're helping to kind of either leave that legacy or figure out how to maximize the value of your company so you can sell it or figure out how you're just going to make payroll the next time, right? Like, how are you just going to get over those basics?
Right.
Yeah.
I think that really is, they'll look at me and say, well, who are you? What are you going to, you don't even know anything about my business. I think that's why it's so important to take it slow with some of these newer manufacturers. They have no idea who the MEP is. Don't have any idea what we do. I usually will bring some information to them like, hey, here's some testimonials from some of the we do get the thumbs up to talk about a few things, a few of the companies that we work with. Just we have some of them on our website and you can see testimonials on there. Our marketing director writes up a success story quarterly. We turn in the names of manufacturers that we feel like we've really done a lot of work in there and there's been a huge impact by the work that we've done. So she turns those into a success story, and a lot of those are on our website as well. Some of the other things that I should mention too is that at the end of a project, let's say Terri, I bring you into a manufacturer to work on their website or to help them with some of their digital marketing. And then 6 months later, at the end of the project, we're graded on the work that we did in there. So they'll get a survey from a third party. It'll have specific questions on there like, how did it impact you fiscally? But then also, how did it impact you? Like, did you hire more people? Did it retain jobs? Did it create jobs? Was there a cost savings? Did you gain more customers around this? We really dig in deep. We usually have that conversation with them before they get that survey and say, hey, you're going to get this survey. It's going to have all these questions. That way they're prepared to do it. They go through that. You can also look on our website and see what those impacts look like as far as dollar amounts and jobs created and retained. And really, that's our goal in the state of Colorado, to create jobs, to retain jobs, to see the success in the manufacturers here.
Well, you just hit on one of the reasons I love working with manufacturing companies, because these are, just from a personal standpoint, these are the people that you're married to, or your brother or sister with, or that's your uncle. We love helping this industry because it's like you can directly see how that's related to us as people, right? Like it helps create jobs, helps the economy thrive locally where you live. And I don't know how you don't get rewarded by that. We're not saving people's lives in the marketing field, but maybe if we're able to help someone's able to like give raises to their staff or hire more people or go on that vacation they've been dreaming of going on because they just increased their revenue. And like, that's gratifying. That's really fun to see those
Yeah.
differences and how it helps the business improve.
I mean, I've been here since 1989. I went to Mesa State College, which is now CMU. Even walking into a new company, a new manufacturer that I haven't been in before, and then it's somebody I went to college with, or it's somebody that I met 20 years ago, and they're the owners. So then it makes it that much more important to me too. I'm like, this is my community. These are my people. These are people I've known most of my life. And so I want to see them succeed in their business and to help them and support them. And honestly, watching our economy really thrive, manufacturers are really at the base of that. I mean, when you start to really look at some of the manufacturers in our community, like, wow, they're employing 250 people right now. That's huge for Grand Junction, right? Or in Montrose, I go down there for a manufacturing association that they've developed. I was there last night, and there are usually about 15 on the average that show up, 10 to 15 manufacturers. And they're the bulk of that community. I mean, they're employing a lot of people in that community. It's probably healthcare and then manufacturers.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I mean, that's kind of how I see it. So it is important.
Yeah, hugely important. Well, so if there is a local manufacturer who wants to start talking to you, what is your typical starting point? Is it that assessment?
Yeah. Well, it's really just a meeting to introduce and get to know each other a little bit. I try to get 30 minutes with someone just to say, hey, tell me more about your business. So then I can start working on some ideas, resources, and different things. I ask a lot of questions in that first meeting. And then it's like, hey, tell me not just about your business, but then show me around and take me for a tour. Also, because I geek out on that, but I do. It's so much fun. So I go in usually ready to take a tour with some closed-toed shoes, and I'm ready to go in. I mean, just depending on where you're at, but you just have to be prepared for anything. And if they're willing to give me a tour, I'll take a tour. And then I ask them like, hey, can I come see you again? What do you need right now? Can I send you some information on this and connect you with so-and-so, and start giving them some ideas. And then I'll let them know about that assessment. And if they're open to an assessment, I can set that up within seconds with one of my colleagues that can put that together and send it right over to me. And I get them set up with that. And then that's the direction we go. That's our starting point.
So somebody here wants to have that first conversation with you. What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
They can call me or email me.
Okay.
So I'm happy to take a phone call at any time. I work really strange hours, so it's never a bad time to call, especially if it means you're going to let me come into your manufacturing facility tomorrow. So if the time works for them, the time works for me. They can text me with their information and say, hey, can you swing by? Can we set up a time? If that's the easiest for them, I'm open to any communication, email too, but I know a lot of manufacturers out on the floor and attached to their phones, and it's not always an email. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I'll make sure I include all of Beth's contact information. I'll have her LinkedIn profile linked too in case you're a LinkedIn person. If you're not a LinkedIn person, become a LinkedIn person also. So Beth, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to go over. Otherwise, I feel like that was great just in educating everybody about who Manufacturers Edge is, what the MEP program is all about, how you can help manufacturers. Thank you so much for joining us
Yes,
today and giving that
absolutely. Thanks
information.
for the
Yeah.
invite. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for listening to B2B Marketing Methods. Please be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast channel and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you and connect. You can find me on LinkedIn or visit our company website at marketingrefresh.com.